Hey guys, it's Vince with Airpreneur.com, and in this video I'm going to walk you through how to do a proper Airbnb or short-term rental arbitrage analysis for profitability so you know exactly how much money your property is going to generate each month and how much you're going to profit for the most accuracy, right? I think for the sake of people getting into Airbnb arbitrage, it's very important that you understand how to do this analysis because I think a lot of people, especially new folks to the space, take deals just for the sake of taking a deal without actually understanding how much profit it's going to make. So we use this exact method. It's kind of just like a napkin method that I'm going to break down for you to understand exactly how much they make each month and how much you'll collect for profit each month. And ideally, you want to reach a range of at least $1,000 per month profit. Those are the types of deals that we take. Those are the types of deals that our students take. And I'm going to break down exactly how to do that in this video. That way it's easy for you to predict these things in the future and understand exactly what it takes to understand those numbers. Now, before we get started with that, there are two very important metrics you're going to need to know before plugging them in and actually running this analysis, right? So the two important metrics you're going to need are, one, projected revenue. Okay, so what do I mean by projected revenue? So guys, this is how much your Airbnb or short-term rental property will make in the course of 1 year. So for this example, we're going to assume this property has a projected revenue of $55,000 and we feel very confident about that number. Now guys, in this video, I'm not going to explain how to get this number. That's not what this video is about. This video is about understanding what the monthly profitability is on short-term rental arbitrage units. Or, you could actually apply this same exact principle, everything I'm about to tell you, to purchasing a property as well, which I'll talk about. But the thing is, getting this number accurately is very important. What you do not want to do is just go on AirDNA, punch in your address, and then take whatever number it spits out and put it here. Because guys, that's not accurate. You want to actually do a proper comparable analysis to your properties to understand exactly how much it's going to make. Again, I'm not going to go into that in this video. I'm going to assume you understand how to get a projected revenue number for the year on your own. And if you don't, I will make a separate video about that. Just drop a comment here if that's something you'd like me to talk about. But once you have this number, we have one of the two things we need to start our analysis. Now, the second thing we're going to need are accurate expenses / costs, right? So what do I mean by this? I'm not just talking about monthly rent, although that is certainly a component of it because again, in arbitrage, we're using rent and not really a mortgage to factor into our monthly profits, right? So rent is one thing that's important. And obviously you want to understand that before going into the deal. Rents fluctuate. And obviously if you know how to negotiate these deals the correct way, like we do, you can typically get the rent down or even get up like rent concessions. So that's important here as well. So if you have any concessions, meaning the landlords will give you 1-2 months free going into the deal, that's important because that will gauge the level of your upfront expenses, right? Now, the other thing with regards to accurate expenses and costs are furnishing, right? Because again, an arbitrage deal, you are furnishing the property. Pardon my chicken scratch, but the thing is, you may not know to a T exactly how much money you're going to spend on furnishing, but it's nice to have a very accurate gauge before going into a deal to understand the rough analysis. So for example, we like to predict a 1-bedroom costs about $5,000 to $6,000 to furnish, and then every bedroom beyond that, so like a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, add another $2,000 to $3,000. So for example, a 1-bedroom would be about $6,000 we'd estimate for this furnishing cost. A 2-bedroom would be anywhere from $7,000 to $9,000, and then a 3-bedroom would be anywhere from $10,000 to $12,000, right? So you'll know based on your experience, the higher end of the property, the more it's going to cost to furnish. And obviously, if you go to more high-end luxury properties, that cost may be even higher. But the thing is, you still want to have a pretty accurate gauge of how much you're going to spend because that'll determine your cash-on-cash return, and that will also determine how long it takes you to pay off that furniture if you're financing it, because we finance furniture a lot in our arbitrage deals. But understanding how much you're going to be spending on furnishing is important going into the analysis. And then finally, the last component of this is understanding monthly expenses, right? So obviously, I'm not just referring to the obvious things like gas, utilities, electricity, all of that stuff, Wi-Fi, and rent. I'm also talking about the things that you may not have predicted originally. Like for example, certain locations have like a trash fee. Certain locations have some sort of, additional permit fee or any other expenses associated with it. So just getting really clear on any other monthly expenses is really important. And sometimes landlords will give you utilities like included in the rent. So obviously understanding that before doing your analysis can greatly alter the health of the deal, so to speak. But once you have these two things, you know exactly how much money it's going to make per year, and you also know exactly what all of your expenses look like going into the deal, we now have everything we need to calculate an arbitrage deal's profitability each month. So let's dive into that. Okay guys, so calculating arbitrage profitability is really a simple 4-quadrant method. There are 4 main things we're going to calculate, and we're gonna spit out a lot of different data from that, so follow along. So for the ease of everybody here, I'm just gonna create a simple 4-quadrant grid here, and we're gonna go through the 4 main things we need to understand going into an arbitrage deal. Okay, so the first is investment, the second, expenses, the third is revenue, and finally is the assessment. And don't worry, I will explain what I mean by that. So guys, for the sake of this example, we're gonna assume that we are arbitraging a 3-bedroom house with a $2,000 per month rent. And we're also going to assume that we did the proper comp analysis on this property, and that this property would produce $75,000 per year. And we feel very confident in that number, okay? That's important. We feel confident in that $75,000. This is super faded, so I'm just gonna draw another line over it so you guys can definitely see that. Okay, so first are the investment details, right? So now what we wanna do is determine exactly what we're spending to go into the deal, right? So first, let's talk furniture. Again, assuming this is a 3-bed, 2-bath, we're going to spend about $12,000 to furnish this deal, okay? Then an additional upfront cost would be a security deposit. Now, it is also up for debate as to whether or not you can get in without a security deposit. We've certainly done plenty of deals where we negotiated a security deposit, but I will say security deposits are a little bit harder to get around than you might think. So security deposits, we're going to assume that the rent on this property, it's $2,000, and let me just put $2K to make it easier, but we're gonna assume that we paid this security deposit of $2K. Okay, so then is first month's rent, okay? Now, we're gonna assume that you guys are actually good at pitching an arbitrage deal and that you followed the Airpreneur method and that you negotiate first month's rent and you get the first month for free, which we do most of the time. So we're going to assume that first month's rent is $0. And then finally, I'm gonna add an M for miscellaneous, things like application fees or some sort of permit fee or deal fee or anything like that. Again, for this particular property, we're going to assume $0. So guys, if we add up everything that it took to get into the deal from a cash standpoint, we're looking at $12,000 plus $2,000. We get the first month rent for free and we have no other miscellaneous expenses. So our upfront cost is $14K, okay, for this 3-bedroom. So now we know quadrant 1. Now, the next component of this, guys, is understanding the monthly expenses. So let's go down the list here because this is a little bit different than a traditional real estate investing deal. We really want to make sure we have all of these correct. Okay, so the first thing, which is the obvious one, is rent. Now guys, if you are not doing an arbitrage deal and you're looking at purchasing a short-term rental, then you can obviously swap that out with the mortgage, but you want to be very accurate on how much that mortgage is because in rent, it's a fixed cost. Mortgage would be a fixed cost, but you want to make sure you factor in everything like the taxes, homeowners insurance and stuff. So rent, again, on this property is $2,000. Now that's the easy one. Now we're gonna go to utilities. Now before I take a deal, I usually go into depth on the utilities and break them down like gas, water, heat, electricity, all of that stuff. And I advise that you do that. But for the sake of this video, I don't have all the board space in the world. So we're gonna assume that all of the utilities are a combined cost of $335, okay? So that's gas, heat, electricity, and Wi-Fi. So I'd make sure that you have Wi-Fi, cable, all kind of factored into this utility cost as well. And I would break this down line by line. Now again, for this video, I'm just gonna put it on one line, but make sure you have that factored in. So now the next thing are consumables. Guys, this is an often overlooked one. Consumables are the paper towels, the toilet papers, the things like that, the things that get consumed that you typically have to restock each month. Good news is these are not typically very expensive, but you still want to make sure that you budget for them to predict the absolute profitability. So for this, we're going to estimate that we're spending about $60 per month. Now this next one, this is one of the most important ones, are the cleaning costs. Now, wait a minute, Vince. Don't the cleaning costs get forwarded onto the guest? They do. However, this revenue number, especially if you're pulling it from AirDNA, factors in cleaning as part of the revenue. So even though you're passing that cost onto the guest, it's still looped into that revenue number and gets deducted by how much you profit. So you still want to make sure you're accounting for it. So a 3-bedroom unit does take a decent amount to clean, and we're going to estimate, just based on our data, this is going to be about $800 per month conservatively. So about $800 in cleaning costs will come out of your profits each month on this one because it is a 3-bedroom property. Now, I came to that conclusion based on the experience of my portfolio. Obviously, this number fluctuates quite a bit, but the worst case scenario, it's going to be $800 to $1,000. 2 bedrooms are usually in the $600 to $800 range, and then 1 bedrooms can sometimes be, $400 or less. Sometimes if you have a guest staying there the whole month, there's 0, but you still want to make sure you accurately gauge this. Then next, we want to factor in any licensing or permit fees per your particular area. I'm just going to assume that this city has none, but some cities do. You may have to pay monthly, you may have to pay yearly, and if you pay yearly, you want to break that down per month. So if it's $1,000 a year, it would be $70, $80 per month. And then finally, just like with traditional real estate investing, you do want to budget for future repairs or incidentals. So if you are an Airbnb arbitrager, you would be responsible for anything caused by the guest, and that would usually come out of your bottom line. Now, of course, Airbnb would likely reimburse you for a lot of those things, although I'm not a legal professional and I will not give any legal advice. But the thing is, even if they do reimburse you, that'll get factored into your revenue and it's still gonna come out of your bottom line. So for incidentals, repairs, we're gonna estimate about $200 per month. That's pretty conservative. Now, if we're gonna take all of these expenses and add them up monthly, that's going to give us a total of $3,395 per month, okay? Now that is an all-encompassing number. That includes everything that we're gonna be spending each month. So here's the good news, is even though that's a lot higher than that original projection of about $2,000 for rent, anything above $3,395 is going to be just pure profit. So does this deal make sense? I don't know yet, let's keep going. So we've got our upfront investment figured out and we've got our monthly expenses figured out. Now let's figure out if the remainder of the deal is healthy and makes sense. Now revenue is very simple. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take this yearly number of 75K and we're gonna divide that by 12. And that gives us a monthly revenue of $6,250, right? Now again, this is assuming this number is very, very accurate. So you do want to make sure that this number is very, very accurate. And if you're unsure of the level of accuracy with this and you've run your comp analysis and you think it could be anywhere from 70,000 to 80,000, then I would be more conservative and run this at 70. And I would also plug in different revenue possibilities to see what your worst case scenario is. But again, I'm going to assume for this analysis, we got 75K and we're very, very confident in that number. So guys, this is a lot of info right now. Now with the assessment portion of this, we're going to make several deductions to understand exactly if this deal is worth pursuing or not, right? So the first thing is going to be monthly cash flow. So I'm just going to put MC, and that's very, very simple. We're going to take this number, our revenue, our monthly revenue, subtracting our monthly expenses. So we're just going to do R minus E equals, and that's going to give us a monthly cash flow of $2,855. Is that good? Well, we still have some more things to assess to make sure that is a worthwhile investment, because that number alone is not the only number we're looking for. But I will say this, a cash flow of anything above 2,000 is typically very, very good. Again, we at Airpreneur very much strive for at least $1,000 per month, because the average real estate investment property, you're spending $50K to get $500, spending $14K to get $2,800 is nuts. So that leads me to the next point of the assessment, which is the cash on cash return, right? This is a calculation that's very, very popular in the real estate investing world. And for arbitrage, we do still want to calculate this because that overall determines how much money we're going to make on our money. So this is very, very simple. First, you're going to multiply your monthly cash flow by 12. So if we do that, 2,855 multiplied by 12, that'll give us a yearly cash flow of 34,260, which is really, really good. And then we're going to divide that by our total capital investment. So that's going to be furniture and everything up front. We're going to take this $14,000 number, and that's going to give us a cash on cash return of 2.45 5, which is actually 245%. Guys, that's bananas. Just to put it in reference for you, if you're buying a real estate investment property, you might cash flow $500 a month. And then if you multiply that by 12, that's $6,000 yearly net. Divide that by a $50,000 down payment, and that's a 12% cash on cash return. Guys, in arbitrage, we're making 245% on our dollars. Nuts. Now, does this mean this is a good deal? Yes. The cash on cash return is good. The monthly cash flow is good. There's still one more component that I like to personally factor in to this analysis. And in all honesty, there are other factors in arbitrage that make it a little bit more different than a real estate investment deal. For example, a real estate investment deal, you're buying the property, you own it for life. In arbitrage, I may only be signing a lease on this property for 2 to 3 years. So I also want to factor that in to, is it worth my time? Is it worth my time to build this business and set up a unit in a property that I have a 2 to 3 year lease for? Obviously, we intend on renewing that lease forever, especially if it continues to cash flow $2,800. But we do also want to consider the fact that this is a different type of deal. So guys, the last portion of the assessment for us is typically what we like to call payback. What is that? Payback means that if you are putting $14,000 down on the furniture and getting access to the property, how long will it take you to make that money back so then you then start cash flowing? Because what we tend to do is pay for that $14,000 on a 0% interest business credit card, so that way I don't have to pay that $14,000 out of my pocket, right? Now, some people, if you're just pulling this out cash, then you actually don't even really need to calculate this so much. But if you are financing that cost and keeping that money in your pocket, it makes sense to understand how long it's going to take to make that $14,000 back. Now, we like to aim for a payback period of 6 months or less per property. Obviously, that payback period gets exponentially quicker the more properties you have and the more cash flow you have coming in from multiple properties. But for the sake of this one deal, this should be a very simple assessment. Now, we could break down the actual numbers and calculations, but it's actually very, very simple. How many months of $2,800 in cash flow is it going to take to pay off that $14,000? So we're basically just going to take the $14K and divide it by our monthly cash flow, and it will take approximately 5 months. So now we understand everything. I feel like that crazy meme of what's his face from It's Always Sunny. But now we understand every aspect of the arbitrage deal, guys. So I think that this part is actually so exciting. And based on this analysis, would I take this deal? Hell yeah. A cash flow of $2,800 is really, really good, especially compared to the average arbitrage deal of about $1,000 per month. A 245% cash on cash return, which is still very, very good. And then finally, a 5-month payback. In my opinion, anything under 6 months is pretty much a steal. And then honestly, the more properties you have, the much quicker this goes. So I'm analyzing this based on you only having no properties. This is your first property. But guys, this is an all-encompassing way to measure the health of an arbitrage deal. So guys, I hope this was helpful and this helps you in your arbitrage process, because as you can see here, if you're getting properties that are cash flowing $2,800 a month, if you have 5 to 10 of these properties in just a year's time, you have drastically changed the trajectory of your life, because now you have anywhere from $15,000 to $30,000 coming in each month in cash flow. You could probably quit your job and live an entirely new life. And then the best part is about Airbnb arbitrage is you can actually take this whole business and delegate it to virtual assistants and software, so you literally spend like no time on the business at all, and that's exactly what we did. So if you guys are interested in learning more about how to build an Airbnb arbitrage business, just head to the link in the description here for our school. We have an entire A to Z course on school that basically breaks down every step of the arbitrage process for beginners. And if you are, however, interested in getting elite mentorship so that way you can accelerate your path to getting to a 6-figure automated business that runs itself so you have your life back, go ahead and head to Airpreneur.com and schedule a free consultation call with us to see if something like that would even be a fit for you. We'll be the first to tell you if it's not. But otherwise, I hope this was helpful, and happy hunting, you guys.